Hi, Heidi.
Hello.
Hi, welcome everybody. Okay, Heidi, I made you co-host so you can help admit people
Okay.
as they funnel in. Hi, Lynn. How's it going? No problem. Well, as people file in, we can work on getting started. Welcome to our Q3 Santa Clara River Watershed Committee meeting. Thank you all for joining us over Zoom. And I wanted to mention that the video is already being recorded. As you enter, can you please write your name in the chat and the agency that you're affiliated with? And we'll start by just going around the Zoom and do some introductions, and then we'll go into some committee member updates. Yeah, so I'm Lauren. I work with the Ventura County Resource Conservation District and also help coordinate this group. And Heidi, do you want to go?
Yeah, I am the co-coordinator and work with Lauren.
Lynn? Oh, Lynn, you're muted.
Sorry. Morning, everybody. Lynn Rodriguez, working on the Ventura River Watershed Resilience Pilot Project. Glad to be here today. See everybody.
Tony?
Good morning, Tony Emmer with United Water Conservation District and the Fillmore and Pirate Basins GSA.
Alec Thill?
Like Phil, and I'm the environmental resource analyst with the County of Ventura's Department of Agriculture Weights and Measures.
Ashley Gilreath?
Hi, I'm Ashley Gilreath. I'm a program manager with the Financial Assistance Branch at DWR. And I apologize, but my camera is giving me some kind of error, so I'll be on audio. And I also have landscapers that just showed up.
That's great. Avery Blackwell?
Yeah, Avery Blackwell, nice to meet you all. I'm with Geosyntech Consultants. Just do some work in the area.
Caroline Frischley?
Wow, you said my last name correctly. That's
Okay.
really impressive. Thank you. I'm Caroline Fritchley. I'm the stewardship manager with the Nature Conservancy and the Santa Clara River and Coast project area. Well, I guess it's been 8 months. It feels like I just started with TNC, but this is the first time I've been to this meeting. So, hi.
Literally. I had a feeling that you were new, but also it's been a while.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. George Nagels.
Hi, I'm from Ventura, California, from Balance to Thrive. I help people improve quality of life for themselves and the wildlife they affect.
Great, thank you. Elaine Anderson.
Hey, good morning. My name's Eileen Anderson.
Eileen, sorry.
And no worries. And I'm with the Center for Biological Diversity.
Great, thanks for being here today. Elizabeth Burns.
Hi, my Zoom is having some trouble. I'm Elizabeth Burns from the Southern Steelhead Coalition.
Great, thanks for having me here. Jody Schweitzer.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Jody Schweitzer. I'm the Water Program Director with the Farm Bureau of Ventura County.
And Marissa Carangella or Carangella.
Hi, I'm Marissa Carangella. I'm the Environmental Services Manager with United Water Conservation District. Hi.
Hello, Laura Schellenberger.
Morning, everyone. It's nice to see you all again. I'm Laura Schellenbarger, and I'm one of the project managers along with Lynn Rodriguez on the Ventura Watershed Resiliency Project and supporting RCD.
Nice to see you, Laura. Peter Schellenberger.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Schellenberger with the City of Ventura Public Works Department. I oversee our stormwater compliance programs and hazardous waste programs.
Great, thank you. Phil McGrath.
Hello, everyone. Phil McGrath, McGrath Farms. Hope to hold on to this meeting as much as I can, but I know I have to leave early, but glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Sure.
Rick Vasilopoulos.
Very good. Rick Vasilopoulos with Senior Water Resources Planner at Santa Clarita Valley Water Agency.
Great, and Rob Hampson.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rob Hampson. I'm a hydrologist with the Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency.
Okay. And Taruna.
Hi. Waiting for my camera to pop up. Hi, I'm Taruna Shulkey. I work with the Ventura Water Pure program, specifically the estuary monitoring component of that program.
Thank you. And Jennifer Lancaster. Okay, Jennifer, I know you're here, but your screen is black. And Jennifer works with the Cayugas Municipal Water District. Okay, is there anyone that I happen to miss that would like to introduce themselves?
Yes, this is Adriana Stovall with Rincon Consultants. I'm a senior watershed scientist.
Great, thank you so much. Thanks for coming. I'm going to share my screen to just overview the agenda. And can everyone see this? So going through our welcome and introductions, we can, oh, Elizabeth, did you have your hand raised, or is that to say you can see the
I
screen?
was gonna say, give you a thumbs up, but I just totally raised my hand. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, if anyone has any general committee member updates or announcements, please feel free to raise your hand and share them. As a coordinator, I just wanted to mention that our last meeting in June was only in person, and it was geared towards getting the agencies that fund the Santa Clara River coordinator position together to just discuss the state of the committee, assess where we want to move forward next, and I can provide a little bit more specific updates on what to expect moving forward towards the end of the meeting. But in terms of the agency that I work for, the Ventura County Resource Conservation District, we have a handful of projects pertinent to the Santa Clara River, but two that were mentioned yesterday. One, the RCD will be reapplying as the lead agency for the SERP permit for Arundo removal in the entire Santa Clara River. This will hopefully advance coordinated efforts with, right now the SERP is being applied to in coordination with the Watershed-wide Arundo Management Group, otherwise known as WAM. And programmatic permits will still need to be obtained, and we have 3 small Arundo removal projects taking place this year. And then our monarch and pollinator garden, our restoration team at the RCD wanted us to share that the Watershed Protection District office on Riverbank Drive has a very thriving garden, and it's tended by work release members of the public to help with maintenance. And they shared some pictures. Can you guys see these photos? Yeah, so there's there's goldenrod, buckwheat, and there's the last photo. But yeah, they're very proud and wanted to make sure I shared it with everybody. Okay, does anybody else have a quick introduction or sorry, announcement that they'd like to share before we get into, hopefully we have a representative from the Department of Water Resources, but
Yeah, so Julie, unfortunately, something pop up that she actually has an injury. She had to get checked out, so I'm going to step in for her kind of last minute.
Okay.
And if you've attended any of the recent funding webinars that DWR has done, this is going to look really similar to the spiel that we gave there, because we unfortunately don't have a lot of new information. With that said, though, feel free to speak up whenever you have a question. You know, you don't need to wait for the end or anything.
Okay. So before we hop into that, would anybody else like to give a general announcement? Yeah, Elizabeth.
So this time I actually am trying to raise my hand. We're going to be having a Southern Steelhead Coalition, Southern Steelhead Coalition Southern Steelhead Symposium. It's a lot of S's, forgive me for that. It is going to be on September 30th. All steelhead stakeholders are allowed to attend. It is for free. I'll put the registration in chat. We are providing a lunch. Yeah, and it'll be on September 30th from about 10 to 5. Come ready to hear a bunch of different speakers from across our Southern Steelhead DPS, which is from Santa Maria to San Diego, Mexican border, talk about how they're trying to save Southern Steelhead in the region.
Great, thank you so much. I will be there.
I'll put the link in chat if you want to register.
Great. Anyone else? Okay.
I have a question. Sorry to interrupt. I couldn't raise my hand. This is Pete Dixon with the Nature Conservancy. I had just a clarifying question for the RCD on the second bullet point about the SERP application. That SERP application is going to cover both the upper and lower watersheds? Is that correct?
That's the intention. Yeah, I am not the expert on the application for the SERP, but the intention is for the entire watershed.
Okay, great. Maybe if there's updates on that further, because the RCD was the lead agency for the Nature Conservancy's SERP that covered the lower watershed, like Piru down. So maybe just if you could provide an update to us if there's any changes to our SERP or if that's relevant to our work. Thanks.
Yeah, that sounds great, Peter. Thanks for bringing that up. Okay. Ashley, if you are ready, you can share your screen and give us a little update.
Yeah, I think it's telling me you have to, oh, perfect. I was gonna say stop sharing. Sorry, I don't normally work in Zoom, so it takes me a second to figure out where all the buttons are. I think, is that popping up for everyone?
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to go through a brief overview of Prop 4 for you. I will share a little information that's specific to the Department of Water Resources, but as I said, we don't have a lot of new updates. That's going to be fairly concise. This is really aimed at if you maybe aren't familiar with the prop yet, you haven't started thinking about it, just giving you an overview of where there's money and some of the things in the prop that might be relevant for you guys to start thinking about now. And like I said, feel free to jump in if you guys have questions. So just first off, if you aren't familiar with what Prop 4 is, it is a climate bond that passed in this last November. It is a $10 billion bond, so it's a fairly large bond. And it has quite a bit of money for a number of climate change related programs. So there's quite a bit of money in fire prevention, quite a bit of money related to wildlife, wildlife conservation board's getting a big chunk. And then there is quite a bit related to water. So we have about 20% of the bond. So about 2 billion of it is going through the Department of Water Resources for various programs. I have a link in the bottom of this and I'll send you the slides as well if you want to read the full text. So this is most of DWR's portion of the bond. So what I have on screen is if you went through the bond, it's going to tell you what agency is getting every pot of money. This is every place that DWR is mentioned. However, we also have some rather large chunks that you aren't going to see as explicitly mentioned under related to flood management, dam, things like that. If you're familiar with our operations and you read the bond, you probably knew that that stuff was going to DWR, but that's just a little side point for folks who maybe aren't as familiar. So you'll see we do have quite a bit of money going towards Sigma compliance. That has been the trend for quite a while for us now. We also have some pots related to brackish decel, stream gauges, regional conveyance projects, water conservation, watershed resilience, river and stewardship, and urban streams. So several of these are going to be brand new programs because we haven't had money for them before. So they'll take a little while to get rolling. And then several of these are going to go through existing programs. Just as a side note, when you see the amount listed under the bond, that's not necessarily what's going to be available for grants. That's just the total amount of money towards that pot. So some of that might end up going towards our state operations, technical assistance, other kinds of work than just the grant program itself. So you're not necessarily going to see a solicitation come out for $386 million for Sigma, for example. So there's a couple of overall bond authorities to just keep in mind. These are things that you're going to see in pretty much every agency's solicitation. There is a really, really large set aside for vulnerable populations. We haven't had a bond that's done a minimum of 40% before. We usually have significantly less in bonds. So this is going to be a big change, and it is a set that applies to every single pot of money in the bond. So you're going to see every agency putting out solicitations with a really big emphasis on vulnerable populations. They're also introducing new terminology. So you do have disadvantaged community, severely disadvantaged community, but then you also have this vulnerable population term, which is specifically connected to who is most vulnerable to climate change. That is something that we need to work out, like what does that definition really look like in a solicitation still? And we're trying to talk to other agencies so we can hopefully be fairly consistent in that. But that's also something the bond didn't do a very good job defining. So you might see a little bit of difference between agencies on that. The bond also does allow for advance pay. It doesn't require every program to offer it, but it does allow every program to offer it if they want to. And that'll be for 25% for timely project initiation. Unlike some of the previous bonds, there's no cap on that. So some of the previous bonds have said you can only advance up to a certain amount of money. This is just 25% of whatever the award is, whether that's a $100 million award or $1 million award. It also allows for reimbursement of indirect costs. And this is the first time we've gotten this bond language. This is a big sticking point for a lot of folks. So that will in most of the solicitations. It's not a you must allow indirect costs, but I can't imagine very many people aren't going to take advantage of that authority. And then another big change is there's no cost share requirement in this bond. We've never gotten a bond that doesn't have some kind of cost share required. Other agencies I'm sure have. Again, if folks want to implement a cost share as part of their policy call with the solicitation, they could. I doubt very many people will do that, but you could certainly see it. So it's just something to be kind of aware of at this point. And then just continuing on some overall bond authorities, there's not an eligible project list. So if, at least for most of the pots, there's a few that do have some language. So if that's not included in a bond, that essentially it means it's going to default to general obligation bond law. And general obligation bond law is capital projects only. So unless there is very specific language with that pot of funding, you won't see any solicitations around outreach or maybe generalized planning, things like that. They're going to have to tie it all to capital projects. Like I said, there are a couple exceptions, a couple pots where that's not the case, but for the most part, you're going to see a whole bunch of implementation solicitations. And if you're not deep into this stuff, but you want more background on what that means, I'll drop my email in the chat after this, and feel free to email me. There's also not an eligible cost list, which also means it's going to default to Go Bond Law. So again, what that means is we're not going to be able to reimburse for a lot of outreach, education, kind of the softer things that aren't normally included in capital projects. We also have very few key priorities in this bond. So usually we get a whole list of things that we have to weigh in solicitations. This bond really only has 2, which is very unusual. And the first is a priority to projects that leverage other funding. That's one that is in almost every bond. And then the second is a preference for projects that utilize the California Conservation Corridor, which is also pretty common in bonds. So if you guys have projects you know you're going to be looking for funding for, those would be two kind of things to think about now. You can actually already put an application in with the Corps and start doing consultations with them to see if you can use them on your project. Those are just like some very early action items you could do, knowing everyone's going to have that in their solicitation. And then switching gears a little more to just DWR's piece, we have a couple of big differences in how we can use the money. So we can take a slightly bigger percentage of the money for our admin than in past bonds, which means there'll be slightly less available for actual grants. But we also have this language that is allowing us up to 10% for technical assistance if it's aimed at disadvantaged communities, severely disadvantaged communities, and vulnerable populations. And it actually also lets us increase that if we think there's a need. So this is a really wide authority that's very different than what we've seen in the past. And I expect you'll see a lot of new programs around technical assistance because of that. Couple of things that are problematic right now. We do not have an Office of Administrative Law exemption. So I know everyone wants to know, when programs for Prop 4 are coming out, that kind of thing. And this is essentially why nobody can give anybody an answer right now. So we have to have this exemption from the legislature that allows us to do program guidelines. Otherwise, we have to go through a formal rulemaking process and actually do regulations to distribute money. And this was missing from the bond language. So the Department of Finance did introduce a trailer bill. They do want to add the exemption, but we haven't seen the legislature actually pick it up yet. And until the legislature does something to give us this authority, you're really not going to see any information on specific solicitations. The process just looks radically different if you have to do regulations versus guidelines. So nobody can really plan until we know what to do with this. So sorry, as a side note, and this will come up at the end as well, we also don't actually have the Prop 4 money yet. So normally we would have gotten that money in June when the legislature passed the budget. And they removed Prop 4 and pushed it to later this summer. So without the money in hand, again, you're not going to really see anybody start planning anything. We did put a page up on DWR. I'll drop the link for this in the chat. We know folks have a lot of questions about this and we don't have a lot of answers right now. So we wanted to at least try to provide a place for updates. There's not a lot of information on here, but we will keep updating it as we do find out more. It will give you a couple of links to programs we know are absolutely going to get more funding. They might do a new PSP. They might change the rules a little bit, but if you want to start doing research on them, those links are there so you can start looking into what kind of stuff they fund. And we also have a couple ways you can sign up for notifications if you're not already on our email list, you're not already on the grants portal, that kind of thing, just so that you do get the updates as we start to find out more. And then there are actually 2 Prop 4 solicitations that aren't doing awards yet, but they are open. So you can contact those agencies. They're adding the money to existing open programs. So they're able to kind of take concept proposals from folks to talk to you about projects, even if they aren't going to be able to award it until they receive the Prop 4 money. The first is the Coastal Conservancy. They have a whole page up on Prop 4. You can watch the webinar that they've already done on it if you want to understand what they're looking for and how to apply. And then the second is the Wildlife Conservation Board. So again, they're running it through an existing program. So you can look at their guidelines that are already up on this. You can contact them about pre-apps, things like that. You just won't see awards from either of these until they do receive the Prop 4 funding and the OAL exemption. So what we're kind of looking at next before we really have a lot of detailed information is we do need to get that exemption and we do need to get the actual Prop 4 funds. We have an October deadline coming up for the governor to approve any bills coming out of the legislature. So hopefully we will actually know something in the next couple of months and be able to get started and start, talking to folks more about what we're looking to do with the money. But for right now, everything's a little bit on pause. So I have my email up here. I also have our funding@water.ca.gov email. That is a general email inbox that goes to the folks that work on our what's called our project services office. They're the folks that run all our funding fairs, and they're kind of a point person for all DWR programs. So if you have a question but you're not sure who to go to, they're a good person to email, and then they can track one of us down and get you the right person. So I will pause there and see if anybody had any questions. It looks like there's a few in the chat. Oh, no.
Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go right ahead.
So I'm hearing that the state is going to be short on money, if not already, then soon. How much of what you were describing is still contingent on the state having enough money in its budget?
That's kind of a hard question to answer because it's bond funding. So it runs a little bit differently. This isn't coming out of your general funds that has to be balanced. It's coming out of the bonds that get sold as you guys charge us. With that said, the legislature does typically think about the impact of bonds when they're approving appropriations, but they don't need to use it. Well, let me rephrase. They don't. If they include Prop 4, they don't need to show it's like a balanced budget in the same way they would need to if it's general funds. So we're waiting to see what they do, but you generally see a lot less impact on if there's a surplus or a deficit on bond funds. It kind of usually doesn't really impact us at all. It has to be pretty extreme for the legislature to stop bond funding. The last time I know of that happening, the only time I think anybody in our program knows of it happening, is in 2008 when they did put a freeze on paying out bond funds.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I have one. So sorry if I missed this in your presentation, but do you have a sense of when the application would be open, or even if it's general, like 6 months, 1 year from now?
So yes and no. We don't know if we're going to be until we know if we have an exemption to be able to do guidelines. We don't know the pathway we're going to be able to pursue to put the money out. And that really drastically changes timelines. Going through a rulemaking process takes much, 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 much longer than doing guidelines. So I would say you're looking at a range for the most part of anywhere from, a year to like several years, depending on what the legislature lets us do. But there are some programs that if they're given an exemption and given the appropriation, they're just going to plop it into an already ongoing program and it would be available almost immediately. It really varies depending on like what specific pot you're looking at. But if it's a new program, something where they are going to have to do, a new guideline package, that kind of thing, it'll take them a little time because we'll need to go through the same public review process that we normally do when creating grant programs.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful.
Any other questions from the group? Ashley, will you be able to share this presentation with me so I can distribute it to everyone, or?
Yeah, I'll send this over. And then, like I said, there's a couple links too. I'll drop in the chat just so,
Okay.
so folks can, like I said, sign up for an email list if you want to do that kind of thing.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, our next presentation is Ventura River Watershed Resiliency Project updates from Lynn Rodriguez, I believe. Lynn, are you gonna do it, or Laura? Whenever you're ready, feel free to share your screen.
Hi. Well, hi, everybody. Lynn, myself, and Laura are going to do this presentation. So I'll start off and I'll share my screen. And as Laura said, we are co-project managers for this project. Sorry, I'm having trouble. Oh, here it is. I have it open, but I have a lot of things open, so. Nope, that's not it.
That's okay.
Sorry. I queued it up. I had it all ready to go. And now I'm having to go searching for it. Let's see.
I think we've all been there, Len.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm surprised I was able to share a few pictures and an agenda today.
Okay, here we go. Yes, sorry about that. So I understand, I'm unfortunately had to miss the last, this last group's meeting, but, I did hear, actually, I think Laura heard some comments about folks wanting an update on our project.
Yeah.
That's
And
going
Lynn,
on in the Ventura River. Yes?
There
you
were a
are
handful of good questions.
There were some good questions. Great. Well, we're ready to answer them.
Yes.
I also just want to FYI, like, you're sharing in a not in presenter mode, not that it matters that much, but in case you wanted to try the slideshow.
Nice.
That's taking a while. Okay, there we go. Is that okay? Better?
Loading,
So
we'll see it soon, I think.
oh, you're not seeing it yet? Nobody can see this?
It just has a loading sign, so I think it'll take a second, like maybe.
Yeah.
I can see it.
Oh, it's
Funny
just
now.
It's a pretty big, there's a lot of graphics in it.
But
so
it also is not in presenter view, and it shows the whole, like your whole slideshow at your sidebar and your top and everything.
Okay. Go back out and. Try that in. I should have just given this to you, Lauren. Sorry.
That's okay. You can find.
Display settings. And I don't use presenter mode very often, as you can tell, so.
Yeah, if you change the display settings, yeah, you can.
Swap. Yeah, right there. Swap.
Did that work? Is that better?
Giving it a second.
Yeah, that looks like it should be correct.
Well, no. Try the display swap again. Anyway.
Okay, so I'm in slideshow. I'm just not seeing the presenter mode under from the beginning. Maybe somebody can tell me where to find it. Okay, this is like eating up the meeting time, so sorry.
That's okay. You can start with some updates or send me the presentation if you want.
Is it under setup slideshow? I pick because I'm sorry, it's just not giving me presenter mode on here, so that's what I'm looking for. Yep, no.
We can just do it this way.
Yeah.
Okay, but everybody.
Or just say, yeah.
Everybody can see my screen though. That's my main thing.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Okay.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's move on. So the things that we wanted to cover today to give you all an update on this project that we've been working on for the last, year and a half or so. Just a little bit of an overview, some of the main elements of the project and the goals of the project, some of the tasks in the scope of work, and then a status of where we are with the project and what lies ahead. So we have talked a little bit about this, I think, at past meetings, but just so you know, this is a special project that was funded, a special program funded by DWR with the following goals, and there are 5 pilots, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the purpose of this grant project is to build stronger based community networks and assess local climate variability and risks, develop strategies for adaptation, strengthen our vulnerable communities, and also build on previous planning efforts. And we have a number of those already in the watershed, including the Ventura River Watershed Management Plan and the IRWM plan, which was a regional plan. And then also an emphasis on enhanced engagement with frontline communities and tribes. This is the state's graphic that they share that demonstrates their commitment to.
We're not, Lynn, we're not following along. I think you're. moving the slides and we're not seeing them move. If you stop sharing Zoom. Oh, there we go.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see if that works. Okay.
Somehow, I don't know what you did, but
I did the swap like I did before, but
there
now
you
it's
go.
working. Okay.
Thank you.
Anyway, and for those of you that aren't aware or don't follow the California Department of Water Resources water plan process, which is completed every 5 years, this last version of the plan, which was released in 2020, early 2024, really has an emphasis on 3 things. One is watershed resilience, watershed scale resilience. One is on a climate resilience, and the other on better serving underserved communities, so equity and the like. So this is the graphic that just, I think, helps to a little bit better understand all the different aspects of this project. And you can see that later at your leisure when the PowerPoint is shared. So the grant was issued by DWR, and there were a total of $10 million allocated to 5 projects across California. We are one. The other 4 are the Russian River, the American River, Calaveras River, and the Pajaro River. So we're the furthest south, and we're the smallest watershed. We received, the Resource Conservation District, as the grantee, received $2 million for our project. And we're more than halfway through now, at least in terms of the calendar. And we have until April 30th to complete the grant. The grant will expire on April 30th. This is money from the state's general fund. This is not funded by a bond. And as Ashley was describing earlier, similar to what they're going to be doing with Prop 4, but with the budget funding, we did not have a match requirement. So we are receiving the full $2 million to do this work. RCD has taken on this grant, and they have some other similar grants underway right now. So it's really a good synergy between the work in this grant and other grants that RCD is managing. And we are working, some of the consultants are the same, so that's been beneficial. We are collaborating with the other pilots, learning from each other as we go through our process. And DWR is very interested in learning from us because they would like to do more watershed resilience level, projects. And I think you saw in Ashley's presentation that watershed resilience is an element of the IRWM funding. And I know other watersheds, including this watershed, the Santa Clara, was interested in the possibility of getting some funds in the future to do some similar work. And that's why we want to keep you, informed about what we're doing, and you'll better understand when this other funds come available, how it might help watershed. So I'm sure all of you know where the Ventura River watershed is, but here's our official map of the watershed boundary, and that is the boundary for this project. I'm sure you all know the basics of the watershed as well, but it's, as I said, kind of fairly small, 226 square miles. But one of the more important features of the watershed is how steep it is from the top of the mountains down to the ocean. And that creates some of the challenges that we face with climate change. We have these various tributaries, and a lot of jurisdictions are involved, but really not that many, just 2 cities, the county, some smaller water districts, and the Forest Service are the main kind of public jurisdictions that we are working with. This is our team of folks that are working on this. We have a really great group of folks that are engaged. Rincon Consultants is the lead, kind of the major consultant with some sub-consultants, and they've done a tremendous amount of work on climate resilience and climate planning, including in the city of Ventura and the county and some of the water districts. And their sub-consultants working with them include Stantec consultants, which they are doing a lot of the technical work on models, on water budget, and some other things. And then Eagle Rock Analytics is the climate expertise that they bring to the table, and they are doing some great work that we'll talk about later. We also have local community-based organization CAUSE engaged with us, and Cal State University out of actually both San Bernardino and Northridge are helping us on this project. We'll talk about that, and some other elements of the work that we're doing. And then, as we said earlier, Laura and I are the project managers working very closely with the RCD team. So Heidi, Lauren, and Jamie Whiteford, the executive director.
And Lynn, can I just add that DWR is also working
Yes.
pretty closely with us. So we've had lots of discussions and meetings with some of DWR's more technical staff as well. And so it's been a real collaborative effort, and it's been great to have their engagement.
Yeah. We actually are meeting with them every month and also quarterly. And they ask us really good questions, and we get a lot of good information from their staff. So that's been really helpful. Okay, so major tasks involved in this grant. We started out with assessing our existing regional networks, which includes our Watershed Council that's been active since 2006. Developing a watershed network, which we already really had that, but we deemed the council to be the network for this grant. Delineating the watershed area. We had chosen the Ventura River boundary as our area, which kept it manageable with 2 years and only $2 million of funding. We develop a vision for the watershed for the planning effort and beyond, and also the goals for the effort. And we'll talk about that later. Also assessing climate vulnerability and the state of the watershed. Some work has already been done in this through the IRWM plan and also through the watershed management plan that was completed in 2015. But we're really taking a new perspective on all of that in this grant. And then assessing vulnerabilities and risks in the watershed related to the climate hazards that have been identified, and developing a historical water budget, which we'll talk a little bit about later. Also, pretty basic things in a plan like this is developing adaptation strategies and implementation strategies going forward to include in the plan that we're writing. And then finally, performance tracking measures. How will we know when we've succeeded? And what are the, the measures and monitoring that will go along with that? And finally, developing the plan itself. I'm going to stop there. Does anybody, well, Laura, did you want to add anything, or does anybody have any questions about the tasks in the grant? Okay. So really one of the most important things about this grant is collaboration, working across all the sectors in the watershed that are working to achieve resilience. That effort has been underway for a long time, even before this grant. But this grant is giving us an infusion of funding to help us strengthen our network and to create some additional pathways towards, effective resilience. So our foundations of collaboration are the Watershed Council, as I mentioned, has been selected as the network. And the council network includes a mailing list, and Heidi can correct me if I'm wrong, because she coordinates that watershed, but we have over 500 people on the list of interested parties, if you will, but also a lot of active members of the network. And so there's a lot of people actively engaged in this effort, or as watching and paying attention to what's going on. We also formed a smaller advisory group to focus on the technical aspects of this project. Basically, it's the leadership committee for the council, which is 16 or 20. I can't remember now how many people are on the leadership committee, folks, and that represents all the different categories. The water agencies, all the public agencies, the agriculture, nonprofits, business community. So those folks were invited to serve on the advisory group. We have about 12 to 15 pretty active members of the advisory group, and we meet every other month to review some of the technical aspects, the methodology being used to develop the watershed budget, the watershed water budget. The climate metrics were discussed by the advisory group, and their input was received by the consultants to help guide the effort. They will be taking a closer look at some of the other things coming up, such as adaptation strategies, and we'll get into that later. The other is enhanced engagement with our frontline communities. Some of you remember Proposition 1 Disadvantaged Community Involvement Grant that ended a couple of years ago, and CAUSE was actually our consultant on that effort, as was the Cal State University folks. And so they already had a good head start on working with the communities in the Ventura River watershed. Primarily on the disadvantaged community side, it's Casita Springs and the Avenue in Ventura. And then with the tribes, it's the main tribal council is the Barbareño Ventureño Band of Mission Indians. And we're also working with one Chumash elder that many of you know. I don't think she's on this meeting, but Julie Tumamite Stensley. So all of this engagement, we're building on what we've done in the past, and we're adding more activities, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then we have public outreach through forums. We've held 2 forums so far to get people in person around the table doing some interactive group activities to help inform the consultants on the work they're doing, and for folks to have the opportunity in a more intensive setting, if you will, to talk with each other and to help provide the meaningful input for this. There's a council newsletter. We're going to be adding more newsletters coming up in the future. And we also have a website, which I've got here, that has all the information on it. So if you're interested in looking more at what we're doing in this project, you can go to the website and get information about the meetings, and the slides are shared, the meeting notes are shared, and the agendas for the meetings, as well as other aspects of projects. This is where all the documents will be posted for review, and so you can check that. And the link, when you see this, you'll see there's a link at the bottom to the website. So all of this work that I just touched on a little bit before that we're doing, that's foundational to the plan itself. There's an assessment going on, a network assessment, where all the entities were surveyed across the watershed as to their role, how they connect with others. This little graphic on the side shows that there will be a map provided by the consultants that will show the strength of the connections throughout the watershed and the areas where there's gaps to be filled. So that's in analysis right now, and we'll be sharing that information back out with our group pretty soon. The vision statement has been completed in a draft form, but we're waiting for the underserved community engagement, particularly the focus groups that will be happening in the next month or two, to help inform that vision before we finalize it. As I mentioned, 2 other things we're trying to do is build on, in terms of the plan itself, is build on the 2015 Watershed Management Plan, which is extremely comprehensive, very strong engagement of the watershed in developing that plan, but it's a bit out of date, and it's also lacking information on SIGMA, climate change, underserved community engagement. So we're really going to be helping to update that plan in a way with this new information. And also the information that was included in the IRWM plan, the last update, which had a lot of information on climate projections, thanks to the work of the team at Desert Research Institute. So I'm going to hand it over now to Laura, and you can just cue me to change the slides when you're ready, Laura. And unless anybody has any questions about the first part that I covered. Okay. All right.
So just some quick updates, overview of the technical work that's been underway in progress. So far, we have the state of the watershed and problem statements chapter developed. It's a summary of existing conditions and key challenges in the watershed. This chapter and the problem statements were shaped by the community, our second forum, the input received during those discussions. Also our advisory group and meetings with some of our key partners. The chapter and problem statements are in administrative review right now, so they've been drafted. Problem statements have been kind of workshopped with our advisory group as well. And they will be shared soon with the broader Watershed Council. Those problem statements are really just to highlight the key challenges currently facing the watershed. And then the climate analysis will be kind of overlaid on top of that, looking at how climate change will exacerbate or change some of those challenges and help guide the direction and the priorities that for adaptation strategies. We also, as Linda's mentioned, though, there's a watershed-wide water budget being developed. So it's an update, like an updated current water budget to depict more recent conditions in the watershed. Stantec is the lead on that, and they have nearly completed a surface water and groundwater water budgets for the whole watershed. That analysis, if you're interested in it, will actually be presented at the September 4th, that's next week, Ventura River Watershed Council meeting. So please attend that or watch the recording afterwards if you're interested in that information. And also the climate hazard analysis, which is led by Eagle Rock Analytics. This task is using downscaled climate models to project how hazards like extreme heat, droughts, extended droughts, wildfire, flooding, and also coastal fog decline may affect our watershed, the Ventura watershed. They are using, you can go to the next slide too, Lynn, I think. We're modeling, I think it's 15 global climate models and 137 simulations downscaled to a 3-kilometer resolution. We're looking at global warming levels of 3 different levels, like 1.5 degrees Celsius, 2 degrees Celsius, and 2.5, I believe. I might have those wrong. I need to double check on that one, which 3 we landed on. But the approach is similar to the one used in the 2019 IRWM plan update. So it's just using the latest modeling available and focusing in on particular climate hazards, like I was saying. Is there a slide? I don't know. Did we lose Lynn? Now I'm
It's
wondering.
like Lynn disappeared.
I was like, wait a minute, I don't even see her. Okay. Well, that's unfortunate. Luckily I have it right here too. So let me see if I can just do this really quick. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully Lynn gets back on.
I know.
So I think actually kind of covered this. So just let's see. So again, this I think is just showing the 6 climate hazards that we identified we're looking at in the climate analysis, and also kind of focusing on in those problem statements and how they are impacting water sectors or water systems in the Ventura watershed. And these water systems were actually kind of defined or required to be looked at under DWR recommended. So that's part of the pilot program. And so I just kind of, as you're all familiar, and I think Lynn mentioned as well, Ventura River has highly variable, it's highly variable with really dry summers and potential flooding in the winters and big swings between drought and wet years. So there's both yearly variability within the year and then across several years. And we really expect climate change to make those extremes even sharper. I want to highlight here also that the modeling results of the climate modeling that Eagle Rock is doing will be presented at the October 2nd Ventura River Watershed Council meeting. And so they'll be sharing and showing where hazards like flooding and wildfire and extreme heat are more likely to impact people and water systems in the watershed. That analysis, I'm happy to also share, is expected to extend to neighboring watersheds, so including the Santa Clara River watershed. So we have yet to really see the results at the moment of that and the mapping, but we are anticipating that we'll be able to extend that hazard mapping analysis beyond the Ventura watershed. So we'll more stay tuned on that. But October 2nd would be when that information is being shared with the council. So these results also will feed directly into the resilience plan and guide the selection of our adaptation strategies. And then looking also ahead on some other next steps, we're going to be shifting from understanding and defining and characterizing our vulnerabilities to developing adaptation strategies next. We will be using metrics and performance indicators developed also through the plan, like water supply reliability and flood exposure and community resilience. So looking at how different adaptation strategies measure up, and where possible, we'll be using existing models to do a quantitative analysis of the risk reduction for some of those priority strategies. So showing how much they could actually reduce the climate risk. That's the goal of this project, is at least a couple, both a qualitative and vulnerability analysis and some quantitative analysis. I'll talk some more too about opportunities to engage. I think we have a slide on some of those upcoming meetings that I've already mentioned. We are also hoping to do some sort of tribal workshop as well. Oh, by the way, this is a picture from our last forum that we did have some of the cause climate youth fellows attend that forum as well. And they provided some really wonderful input and feedback as well. And they're the ones conducting the surveys we have going on in Westside, Ventura, and Casita Springs with community members to better understand their concerns and priorities for climate vulnerabilities. So looking ahead, this again is those upcoming meetings. If you wanted to make a note, if any of them sound interesting to you, we have the September 4th Watershed Council meeting and the October 2nd meeting. So the September 4th will be more of a focus on the water budget results, and October 2nd, we have a number of results at that one. We'll also be talking about the network assessment, survey results, and the climate modeling analysis. We also are planning a third forum. It'll be virtual, not in person like the previous two, that will focus on adaptation strategies in October. I don't know if Lynn is back yet. I don't have my screen to see you all.
Lynn is back.
Okay, great. And yeah, let's see, do we have another one? Oh, so generally looking ahead, the whole goal here, or one of the major goals, this effort is to set up the watershed for future funding. And having a resilience plan in place will make us more competitive for implementation dollars. So that we see this as an opportunity to also really build capacity for the Watershed Council as a network and strengthen the network. and build stronger collaborative coalition to lead the resiliency work forward. And I don't know if Lynn has any other things she would like to add, if there's any questions already, but yeah, we're happy to answer some questions. This is just a snapshot of where we're at right now. And there's been a lot of learning along the way since it's a pilot. It's also been a very condensed timeline, or at least what feels like a condensed timeline, I'm sure, to us that are involved in this. So we've been really appreciative of all the time that the partners, key partners and members in the Watershed Council have offered up to participate in this project.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. And my apologies for just all of a sudden I was gone. And it took me a little while to get back on again. So I'm glad you had the presentation, Laura.
No problem. Luckily, I had it ready.
Yeah.
Made it
Yeah.
work. Does anybody have any questions? We had some comments in the chat, but if you have any questions and you're here over Zoom, feel free to chime in. This is kind of, I think it's referring to like the consultants that were hired, but someone asked like, is there a possibility or like what can we do to keep this process accessible for smaller, more local companies or consulting groups, rather than like larger ones with like higher overhead or things like that? And so I'm not sure maybe it could, I think some of our consulting groups are fairly local, even though some of them are kind of large. But if people just have comments about that.
I will say that having Resource Conservation District be the grantee, at least from my viewing of this, has, I think, really enabled us to work with all different size partners. I mean, we have Cause as, which is a pretty small nonprofit with a small piece of the work. We've got some individuals we're able to also compensate, for example, tribal elders and tribal members in the tribal council for consultation and providing their expert, and experience and knowledge towards the project, which is something that DWR was encouraging. And then there's actually been a lot of meetings. DWR has provided us a lot of support in how to do that, how to bring in more equity and vulnerable communities perspectives. And so there has been a lot of flexibility, I believe, with this program and working with RCD to make that happen. So I think I've been appreciative of that.
Can I just,
don't know, Lynn, if you want to say anything else?
Yeah, and I think, Laura and I are both actually consultants on this project, hired by the RCD to kind of not only help manage the project, but actually provide our expertise and our knowledge, having both been very active in the county watersheds over the years. So, and we,
I don't know how much smaller you get than that.
yeah, we're pretty
individual.
About it. It's good.
Or independent consultants.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a point well taken, but it's also, there's a huge advantage to having a firm that, I mean, they are large, Rincon, but there's some of their subs are, but they are very active in this field. They have a lot of expertise and that expertise really has helped us. So, but if, for the future for the Santa Clara River watershed and to keep costs down, I understand that that's an important factor. You can certainly, especially if you're successful in getting some funding to do similar work, be thinking about how you would want to structure that and who would be involved. There's a lot of expertise in the committee, just like we see with the council in Ventura. And if you remember, you probably don't remember this, but unless you were involved in the Ventura River, but when the watershed management plan was developed back in 10 years ago, they leveraged a lot of local resource and knowledge, which was great. So yes, we're mindful of the need for that.
George, do you want to raise or unmute yourself?
Yes, thank you. So there was an additional comment that I put in, which is about, it relates to what Laura was saying, which I really appreciated regarding the climate modeling. So I'm understanding that a lot of data collection infrastructure has been defunded, and maybe the people also that have been working with that data at the federal level have been laid off. So I'm just curious, are we kind of gathering that information, understanding, assessing what we have lost and what we may need to do as a county to make sure that we're getting good data going forward, specific to climate modeling and data measurement about climate?
Well, that's a good question. Fortunately for us, the state of California is still highly committed to, the data that they help fund. I realize some of their money comes from the federal government and some of the data is collected at the federal level, but we have a very robust climate change and data structure within the state government. So I have faith that, at least for the time being, Eagle Rock Analytics actually helped develop some of the models and update the modeling that's being used for this, and they are local to California. So, but I think your fear, George, is, certainly we don't know what's going to happen down the road with federal resources, but we have some very robust state resources at the moment to keep us going.
Does anyone else want to chime in about that or have any other questions? Okay. Thank you for joining.
Could I ask a quick
Yeah.
question? Sorry to put people on the spot, but I don't know if there's just curious if anybody has already thought about attending a couple of those meetings to find out more about the project. Maybe just out of my own curiosity. You want to raise a hand or anything? I'm just curious how interested folks in this watershed might be. Okay. It's just helpful for us to know.
And we're lucky to
provide
have
information to you.
Some of you on this call, like Jody and Peter, and maybe there's somebody else I'm missing, are also on the advisory group. So we do already have crossover between the two watersheds in the groups that are sort of countywide. So we appreciate your participation.
Yeah. Would you, based off of the experience so far, and maybe if, I'm not sure where DWR is at in terms of taking these pilot projects and implementing another round of this version of projects, but does it seem like they will, and would you recommend this project for the Santa Clara River?
Yeah. I mean, it's a little more challenging with Santa Clara being across two counties, but so far I would say it's been a very valuable exercise. And one thing I didn't mention, and I don't know if Laura did when I got bumped off my computer, but or off the meeting, but we have strong local partnerships, and that we've worked closely to interview all the partners during this process. It does really help strengthen those connections. And right now the IRWM program is a bit on pause, I guess I should say. And so it's been really valuable to have that in-depth, connection with folks coming to the table on a particular topic like this. It kind of drives a lot more purposed collaboration, I guess.
And I'll also just say that this project, this grant funding does help support the work of the council, like some of the meetings and such. So I'm just putting that out there, that the way that we've viewed this and the way that a future grant, if interested, the Santa Clara Watershed in conducting something similar to this, if there's funding, is that, there's opportunities to craft it in a way that it actually funds the committee work for at least the time being, or during that time, or helps supplement and bolster it. So
Mhm.
it's helping paying for the coordinator, and RCD's time, and then depending on what their capacity, so.
And then, I guess my last question before we should move on to the next presentation is is the hazard mapping that will be presented October 2nd, will that presentation include the information extended into the Santa Clara River, or that's just like a potential for the future?
Yet to be determined. I think that's something we need to work out with the consultants, but certainly we will not, if it makes sense and there's, time available and space to do that, we would, definitely encourage and welcome being able to cover that as well. But I think discussion will focus on the Ventura watershed.
Great. Thank you.
We can think about if there's need for bringing that information into Santa Clara, but I think it would make the most sense to attend the meeting in the council,
Yeah.
Ventura Council.
It looks like a handful of people are interested in the water budget and climate studies, but it might be better for them to watch the recording. But yeah, thank you both. Our next presentation is from Peter Schellenbarger about the MS4 permits. Please share your screen whenever you're ready.
Wonderful. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Great. First off, I want to say thank you for having me come here and talk about low impact development requirements within the 2021 MS4 permit that applies to Ventura County. I am speaking on behalf of the countywide stormwater quality management program. And I work for the city of Ventura, and I run our stormwater quality programs that kind of are within Public Works. And then I do other program management. One thing I'm gonna forget, and I think it's kind of, there's a nexus here, is that if people are familiar with what Beacon is, which is the Beach Erosion Authority for Clean Oceans and Nourishment, they had a really great webinar yesterday. It was called Beaches from Space. It talked about, there's a lot about the Santa Clara River, and that's why I bring it up. They were talking about basically the narrowing and widening of beaches, and in particular in the Santa Barbara Ventura littoral cells. And they had noted that the littoral cell that is just down gradient of the Santa Clara River happens to be the fastest widening section of beach in Southern California over the past 4 decades. And so if you are interested in that, I would reach out to Beacon. And the webinar was put together by USGS professor Jonathan Warwick, PhD. That was it. I just wanted to plug that real fast because I thought it was really interesting.
What
But
is the acronym again?
Beacon, beach, I just closed it.
Oh, it's actually Beacon, like BEACON. Okay.
BEACON, yeah. And I just dropped the presentation in the chat, the PDF. So, take a look at that. But that is not why I'm here today. I'm here to talk about low impact development, and I'm going to share my screen, and then I'm going to turn off my video right now, and then I will share my screen. Give me a second. It's always fun. Sheen, ooh. Share, there it is, right in the middle. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, it's this one. You're gonna see my beautiful family. Can you see my beautiful family?
Not yet,
One.
but it's on its way.
Can you see it? There we go. I think you can see it.
Yeah, we see it. Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
All right, well, now you don't see them, you see a presentation. You see a presentation now?
Yeah, I did.
All right, great. So I will start. Oh, let me get my notes up. So like I said before, my name is Peter Schellenbarger, and I work for the City of Ventura Public Works, and I do a lot of public works things, but one of them is stormwater management and water quality. This is what I'll be talking about today. I've got a lot of slides. I'm gonna try to blow through a lot of them because I think that I will do a better, it will be better for me to explain them without and not read them a lot of the time. So if you care to read the text, that's fine, but listen to what I'm saying. I think that would be the most valuable. But I will talk about the regional permit. I will talk about the differences between the last two iterations of the MS4 permits, and I'll talk about the technical guidance manual, and then questions and answers. And if you have just generic questions about stormwater, municipal stormwater, permitting, I'm happy to answer those as well. Whoa, okay. So the mission, so the first thing is water quality background. So the mission of the Regional Water Board is to preserve and enhance water quality in the Los Angeles region for the benefit of present and future generations. So just want to reiterate that local municipalities and local agencies, we're not in charge of the water quality in the watershed. The watershed is managed, the water quality is managed in the watershed is managed by the Los Angeles Regional Water Quality Control Board, which is a division of the State Water Resources Control Board, which is a division of Cal EPA and US EPA. So the regional board, they issue discharge permits and waste discharge requirements for urban discharges, for agricultural discharges, for septic systems, for sanitary sewers, et cetera, et cetera. So they're really ratcheting down what can be discharged into our watersheds at appropriate levels. And this was supposed to be my second slide. I apologize. So I am speaking on behalf of the Countywide Stormwater Quality Management Program, and it is all of the public agencies in Ventura County. I'm the chair of the Planning and Land Development Subcommittee. Doesn't mean that I know more or less than any others, but I just happen to talk a lot and I get to give great presentations like this. So all of us public agencies work together collectively in Ventura County to better understand water quality and to preserve local water quality. So what are the major surface water discharge permits that are in the Santa Clara River? Well, the major ones are really wastewater treatment plant permits. I think there's over 10 in the watershed stretching through LA County and Ventura County. MS4 permits, there's one regional MS4 permit right now that covers both Los Angeles and Ventura counties. There's the industrial general permit, so industrial dischargers or industrial facilities have a permit, construction projects have a permit if they're over an acre, and there's waste discharge requirements for irrigated lands, formerly the agricultural waiver. I just want to note here that all that green is open space. So 90.5% of the Santa Clara River watershed is open space. 5.5 of it is urban, and 3.2 about is agriculture, give or take. And that more or less almost rounds up to 100%. So there's a lot of open space contributions in this watershed. A little bit more about, I'm going to dive kind of in, well, what is the MS4 permit? That was my last slide, but MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System Permits, which is basically urban runoff or runoff from conveyance systems that are not combined with the sewer system. So just storm flows or non-storm flows. And the Los Angeles Regional Water Quality Control Board has given us 4 permits since it was first adopted in '94, then a second permit in 2000, and then a third permit in 2009, which was challenged and readopted in 2010, and a fourth permit in 2021, which happens to be a regional permit. It is the first regional permit. So LA County and Ventura counties have the exact same permit under the same NPDES or National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit. Sorry about that. And one thing to keep in mind is that every iteration of the permit is more stringent and more prescriptive as we learn more about the watershed and what works in terms of pollutant reduction and preservation of existing water quality in our watersheds. MS4 permits have 5, or this is 6 major programs that are required to be implemented. Public information and outreach, business inspections, planning and land development program, which we'll be talking about basically in more detail, construction inspection programs, public agency programs, and then illicit discharge and detection systems. Planning and land development program, that's really the low impact development. That is redevelopment and new development, mitigation for for pollution that they may or may not generate. So it's just source control at the parcel level. And the goal of the planning and land development program is to minimize and mitigate pollution from impervious surfaces, to implement non-structural controls like best management practices, pick up your trash, sweep pollution that you may or may not generate, and then structural controls, so implementing infiltration basins, rain gardens, biofiltration, etc. So LID was first required in 2000. So, that's 25 years of low impact development in Ventura County. But it really is dependent upon your development rate or redevelopment rate in each jurisdiction. So some jurisdictions might have more LID projects than others based upon their land conversion for redevelopment rates, new development that may be coming in, or really just the size of the jurisdiction. And it has been identified that poorly planned and constructed new and redevelopment projects have the potential to impact both hydrology from an erosion standpoint, but also water quality. US EPA and the California water boards really have been pushing towards more of a natural system of stormwater management. So managing stormwater the way that nature does through infiltration, evapotranspiration, capture and reuse and biofiltration, and moving really farther away from moving stormwater away from our structures and parcels and civilization as quickly as humanly possible, and really kind of moving away from like that black box solution. There's a little plug. This is Kellogg Park in the city of Ventura. It was constructed about 5-6 years ago. I forgot the exact date. But when it rains, it floods. It is designed to flood actually, and so there is infiltration in the middle of the park with retention. It not only takes runoff from the parcel itself, but also from the right-of-way and nearby streets. So this is just an example of low impact development at a city park. And like I said before, the 2021 permit combined Los Angeles and Ventura County, and so now we now have the same requirements. If you were to compare the 2021 MS4 permit to the 2010 MS4 permit, there are some changes. Things that remain the same are public agency review and approval processes, strict adherence to MS4 permit requirements as it relates to low impact development. This is really related to how much water you need to collect and the ways in which you can collect that water and treat that water. You need operations and maintenance plans and covenants, basically ensuring that long-term maintenance is completed legally, that you legally are obligated to do that. And then routine maintenance of the right-of-way or emergency projects do not apply. What's different from the 2010 Ventura County MS4 permit is they changed the name of what a project is. They also changed how the applicability requirements, they changed some hydro modification requirements. They changed how much water that you potentially need to capture. They changed technically infeasibility and then on-site flow-based BMPs. And I'll go into a little bit of detail about each of these. So priority development projects, what changed is in yellow. So what happened is more projects. If you were to compare the thresholds between the 2010 and the 2021 MS4 permit, the 2021 MS4 permit has more stringent thresholds or should I say the thresholds have been tightened in terms of how redevelopment projects are triggered to mitigate their stormwater on site. And so it's a smaller area that needs to be disturbed to consider it to trigger the MS4 permit. So it used to be 1 acre or 10,000 square feet of impervious surface. Now it is only 10,000 square feet of impervious surface and of an existing development. And if you alter or replace or create 5,000 square feet of impervious surface, then you need to mitigate that. Just a reminder that streets and roads construction typically only need to treat to the maximum or need to mitigate to the maximum extent practicable. That was a little change between the 2021 and the 2010 permit. But I think what's really important to identify here is that, you know, restaurants, parking lots, automotive service facilities, retail gasoline outlets, if they're disturbing 5,000 square feet or more, or creating 5,000 square feet or more, I should say, of impervious surfaces, they need to mitigate that through a best management practice, which is a structural control, structural treatment. Hydromodification, that's basically a fancy word of saying erosion and sedimentation impacts and natural channels, more or less. And in Ventura County, if you have a new or redevelopment project that's disturbing an area of 50 acres or more, then hydromodification controls need to be implemented as outlined in the MS4 permit. Great, so you have a project, it triggers post-construction project mitigation. What does that mean? Well, it means that you need to capture and treat, or I should say capture and infiltrate, and if that's infeasible, you can treat a certain volume of water. And it is the greater of the 3/4 inch 24-hour rain event or the 85th percentile 24-hour rain event. And it's whatever volume of water is greater when you compare these two scenarios. In the 2010 permit, it was actually, you could choose which volume of water you wanted to use, and usually most projects would choose the smallest volume of water to mitigate. But now it's whatever is greater between the two that are highlighted in yellow. And the Ventura Countywide Stormwater Quality Management Program, we have created gridded geospatial maps that are available on ventura.org, their public works agency's GIS viewer. The link is shown here, but it's very accessible. And I can provide this link to whoever, I'll throw it in the chat after this, wants to see. But in essence, you know, you pull up this GIS geospatial viewer, you type in your address, and you can see what the 85th percentile 24-hour storm is. So I've highlighted in the city of Ventura, and what you can see is that in some areas of Ventura, in like the west side in downtown, the 3/4 inch or the 85th percentile 24-hour storm is smaller than the 3/4 inch storm, but in the east end, it's a little larger. So as you start moving east, rainfall volumes get larger that you have to mitigate. One other thing that was a change between the 2010 and the 2021 permit is the volume of water that needs to be retained. There was something that was called the effective impervious area. It is a technical term for an area of a project that is really hard to capture the stormwater from because of maybe slopes, or it's something that when you're entering the parcel, it would be like a ramp. And it's really hard to mitigate that when it's sloping to the street or the right of way. The 2021 permit eliminated that. It has simplified the equation, and it's simplifying the process for identifying how much water that needs to be mitigated on site. Also, technical infeasibility. So what does that even mean? That means, well, can I infiltrate on site? It's a big question. And sometimes site-specific conditions don't allow that. In the previous permit, if you're in your native soils or your on-site soils, infiltration rate was less than 0.5 inches per hour. That was defined as technically infeasible to infiltrate. In the 2021 permit, it's been lowered to 0.3 inches per hour. So what is that going to do? Potentially less projects will be technically infeasible to infiltrate their storm flows on site. And so when you are mitigating stormwater, there is a hierarchy, a decision-making hierarchy about, well, what do I need to consider and what BMPs should I plan for for site planning, more or less. And so your first consideration for mitigation strategies for structural controls is on-site infiltration, basically retention BMPs, which includes on-site infiltration, bioretention, and rainwater harvesting. Now, if on-site infiltration is infeasible because of on-site soils, and bioretention is also infeasible because of soils, and rainwater harvesting is infeasible because of use, then you can move into the second category, which is on-site biofiltration or off-site groundwater replenishment and or retrofit projects. I will note that offsite groundwater replenishment and offsite retrofits are really dependent upon your municipal agencies, because those types of projects are usually like a in lieu fee or a banking system, or you have to have another parcel or private development that wants to work with you. So it's a little more complicated, but typically on-site biofiltration would be what would be used in the second category. Now, if on-site biofiltration is technically infeasible on-site, then you can move into on-site treatment or flow. That would be a BMP that is based strictly upon a CFS, and it's not sized for a volume. And this is highlighted yellow because something has changed under the 2021 permit. I will go into that in the next slide, or the next two slides as well. So if you are utilizing on-site biofiltration and you are sizing your BMP based upon a volume of water, if you were to compare the volume of water between infiltration or retention and biofiltration, if you're using biofiltration, you need to mitigate 1.5 times the retention volume. So if you can't retain storm flows on site, then you are going to biofilter, which means you are going to release that water off site, and you have to mitigate a larger volume of water now. One thing to note is that proprietary biofiltration systems or high flow biotreatment devices with impervious vaults are actually viewed by the water board as a flow-based system, and it does not fall into these on-site biofiltration categories, because this on-site biofiltration category is based upon a volume of water with specification that does not involve highly engineered soils. And so when you're looking at like a flow-based BMP now, these are high flow rate biofiltration units, or you could say perk filters, or a filter that's in a impervious box where the stormwater is siphoned through these systems. These types of systems, they need to have a certain degree of approval. There's more approvals necessary. It can't be approved now at the agency level. The executive officer of the Los Angeles Regional Water Quality Control Board now wants to review all on-site flow-based BMPs, and they put it out for public comment, and then these BMPs are approved or not approved based upon the executive officer's decision-making for the project. And the project applicant or the developer actually has to submit something to the land use authority or the municipal agencies, and then the municipal agencies submit this to the executive officer of the water board. And then you wait. You wait for a decision if the EO will or will not allow for these flow-based BMPs to be used. And that is a process that was outlined in the 2021 MS4 permit and was not in the 2010 permit. And this process may or may not complicate developments. It is more challenging to use a flow-based BMP, structural BMP moving forward because of this EO approval that is required. As I said before, alternative compliance and offsite mitigation measures. It's really available based upon your agency's available programs, or if it's an off-site project retrofit, if you find another private development that wants to partner with the new and redevelopment project. These alternative compliance approaches are feasible, but they're more challenging to implement because if it's offsite mitigation, you have to find a location that one has like a banking approach or has banked stormwater that you can pay into. You have to have a groundwater replenishment project that's in the area that you can work with, or like I said, you have to have a parcel or private or public development that wants to be retrofitted. And so the 2021 MS4 permit, it's new. There's some new requirements. And to explain these requirements and provide guidance to the development community, the Ventura County Stormwater and Quality Management Program decided, hey, this is a great opportunity for us to, do some great updates to our technical guidance manual for stormwater quality measures, which has been around for more than 20 years. And we try to update this manual every time there's a new permit that's been released, because obviously every permit has new requirements, and with these requirements, new guidance really needs to be provided to the development community. The manual itself explains the MS4 permit in more detail. It doesn't provide any interpretation, more or less. It really just tries to provide context about what the MS4 permit is trying to achieve and the regulations within that permit. The TGM is a tool to assist in the design and incorporation of low impact development into new development and redevelopment designs to meet the 2021 regional MS4 permit. And I really want to highlight that, is that projects are not complying with the 2025 TGM. The TGM is not the regulatory requirement. The 2021 regional MS4 permit is the regulatory requirement that new and redevelopment projects have to comply with. And the TGM provides specifications that municipal agencies can rely on so that these projects can comply with the 2021 permit. And that is really important here, because the municipal agencies are the ones that are reviewing and approving submittals from new and redevelopment projects, and they have, they are the land use authority, and they make decisions about compliance. And their compliance is based upon the 2021 regional MS4 permit and how it is interpreted and being implemented in their jurisdiction. And so what is in the TGM? Well, it's a really, really big document, but the most useful things that I think I want to share is that it provides design criteria, right? So this is a biofiltration system. And so it will provide you with details that can be modified for civil plans. And these details identify constraints, considerations, and requirements for things like ponding depth and soil media composition and thickness of mulch on top of biofiltration. And all of this information was not in the MS4 permit. But we, as land use authorities and municipal agencies, understand that we wanted to provide these types of resources to the development community so that they could comply with the MS4 permit. And so these are like design specifications and profiles that can be used as reference to design what is needed for new and redevelopment projects to comply with the MS4 permit. And so this is just one snippet of a couple pages in the 370-page document. But of all of the types of BMPs that are included, the majority of them that have specification that's called out in the TGM have information like you're seeing on your screen for engineers and architects to review and incorporate into their newer redevelopment designs. And so, like I said, the document's massive, right? Well, you don't know, but it's 370 pages long. And then there's a bunch of appendices. So the best thing to do if you have questions or are confused is to always contact the stormwater lead at the land use authority that you're applying for a new redevelopment project in, because there's always different submission requirements, review requirements, when that review happens in each agency. And relying upon maybe an agency like Oxnard, their submittal processes for Ventura County or the city of Ventura or Camarillo, we might not have the same submittal requirements. And so always, always, always contact your land use authority or go to their website for more information to find out what needs to be submitted. That could be in the Public Works Department or the Planning Department. It kind of depends where the stormwater compliance, well, at least in my city, it's called the stormwater compliance study requirements are housed. And there's tons of also technical worksheets in the TGM that municipal agencies need to review and see with planning with applications for new and redevelopment. And on your screen, you're seeing one of those worksheets that help in the design and construction or the design of a biofiltration system. So that was a lot, and I apologize if I went really fast. I just wanted to provide quite a high level of explanation about low impact development that's contained within the 2021 regional MS4 permit. If you have any questions, please let me know. I just stopped sharing my screen. I apologize, but let me throw this up there. And yeah, if you have any questions, let me know.
Thanks, Peter. I think you're still sharing your screen, but
I am, because my name is on there.
okay, that's great.
Just
wanted to
but
make sure you knew.
I will copy and paste that into the chat now, and I'm stopping screen share.
I think that, George, would you be interested in unmuting yourself and explaining some of your questions?
Thank you for that invitation, and I want to thank the speaker for his presentation. I think one of the key questions that I come out of this with is, how do we measure as a watershed community the results per dollar invested by the public and private entities in this effort? Because as you mentioned, 370-page document, a lot of paper, a lot of projects waiting for review and approval, a lot of ostensible follow-up. Then I'm also observing real situations like downtown Ventura where there was flooding. One city councilor asked me about it, and I looked into it, and I found an impressive number of clogged catch basins. So the maintenance just wasn't coming through. So it's kind of a two-level question. How can we how can the various jurisdictions in the watershed, number one, assess their effectiveness in terms of quality and quantity of water, and number two, make sure that these great designs, whether flow-based or non-flow based, are really being maintained in a way that makes them functional.
Okay, so I'm going to try my best to answer all of those questions, and I think they're very similar to what was in the chat. And so if I don't answer something, please let me know. And I think we're talking about two different things, and I'll explain why. And so you're talking about the corner of Thompson and Ventura, or the avenue, that has flooded historically, as historically a low point in the city. And it does flood during rain events. In terms of the storm conveyance system not functioning and causing that flooding, that is a separate topic from the planning and land development component of the MS4 permit. And that has more to do with operations and maintenance and conveyance. I think that, you know, operations maintenance is incredibly important. The city, in that region of the city, you know, we manage our catch basins, we clean them twice a year. And during rainfall events, we've got a staff of 10 that are going out and responding to known hotspots that flood periodically. And so having programs in place, one for operations and maintenance when it's not raining, and response teams for when it is raining, to make sure that flooding, when it does happen, because it will happen, are responded and trying to be mitigated as best as possible, and then learning from those two things and making better plans in the future about what could change, I think is how flooding in general in our municipal agencies are managed. And at least in the city of Ventura, you know, we're aware of that low spot in that section of the city. And so, you know, we've done a lot of additional maintenance in the last 12 months to try to improve the conveyance of storm flows in that zone in and around Ventura Surf Shop and Topa Topa, all the way down to Clara, the new apartment buildings on the corner of Thompson and Ventura Avenue. In terms of checking and ensuring QA/QC on flow-based treatment units, so there is an engineer that reviews submitted design calculations during civil plan checks. And so if you have like a project that is 2 acres and you identify the amount of rainfall that you need to mitigate, there are technical calculations taking into consideration the length of time it takes from water to travel from point A to point B offsite, and then looking at you know, your manning coefficients and runoff coefficients, and identifying the CFS. And then when you have a CFS that you need to design for, and it's easier to identify a flow control based upon the design from the manufacturer, or if it's a flow-based control that needs to be designed for that's non-proprietary, you can identify the CFS and then build your system around that flow. If we're talking about volume, it's very similar, except that you have a volume of water that you need to mitigate, and you design your infiltration basin or your biofiltration basin, or your planter box around that volume, and you can change certain things in the design based upon your site's constraints. Like you could have thicker soil media or not as thick soil media, or you could put an under drain or no under drain, or you could use a larger trench for infiltration. And so that's the way that you can provide flexibility in these designs. And all of that is QA/QC'd, at least at the city of Ventura, during the civil plan check review during permitting. So if a project is going to submit a stormwater compliance study or needs to mitigate stormwater on site, during plan check in public works, like someone is reviewing all of those documents to making sure that it is all in compliance with the MS4 permit. And then I wonder how does that make sense, George? Does that answer your question?
I think you said things I was already aware of as far as the civil plan check. My questions relate more to the function and the follow-up. I think, and then also the results. So our effectiveness from a steelhead's point of view, or from a stickleback's point of view, that water that's really arriving in the estuary, what's the quality of that? And, you know, given all the money that we're spending, are we really effective at improving that quality? That's really the heart of my questions. Thank you.
Okay, well, was always something I appreciate that question, and I think that if you look at low impact development, like low impact development is influencing such a small percentage of urbanization in our municipal jurisdictions or unincorporated areas, that if you're trying to look at the benefit of low impact development projects on the water quality of downstream, for example, in estuaries, I think that it's not even a drop in the bucket. I mean, it is like a thimble in an ocean perspective, particularly when you're looking at like the Santa Clara River, right? When you're looking at a watershed that's 90% open space. And so a project that like one project that's 1 acre's influence on the water quality is very small. Now, collectively over, I would say, century or two, the theory is that as redevelopment occurs, that we are mitigating our new and redevelopment, and that water quality will be preserved moving forward. And I think that's the intent of low impact development. If we're looking at regional water quality or watershed health, I think that you need to think about all of the sources of potential pollution, and then the ability or the rivers or our fluvial systems, you know, how are all of those sources impacting and influencing water quality? So, you know, like I said, there was multiple major discharges in the Santa Clara River. There's urban, there's ag, there's industrial, there's wastewater treatment plants, and there's a variety, there's septic systems. Those all collectively are loading things or constituents of concern into the watershed. And then there's 90% of that watershed that we have absolutely no control over. And so measuring water quality really comes down to like regional monitoring of the receiving water itself or the main stem of these rivers to understand, you know, what is problematic in that system or that segment of that system, and then using the most up-to-date science and monitoring data to inform, you know, potential responsible parties, or think about, well, do we have missing data, and how do we get that? How do we answer those questions that we may or may not have answers for right now because data is missing? And I feel like that's what we do as a stormwater practitioners in Ventura County, is we're trying to answer those questions. And then when we have requirements, we're trying to, one, comply with those requirements, but also collect more data so that we can improve our programs and processes to, you know, if we find pollution, to mitigate that pollution or eliminate it. Is that helpful?
Thank you for your effort. I think it's a lot of words, and the key thing I'm interested in is, for example, I appreciate you noting that 90% of the watershed you feel you don't have control over, but I would respectfully disagree. I think that the 100-year floodplain offers a tremendous opportunity to create structures, maybe even sell gravel from certain parcels to get the grade down and allow for retention time, as you referred to it, for some of these peak flows. We have a lot of fines in our stormwater. We have a lot of fecal coliform or total coliform, as you've mentioned, in some of the discharges that are going to the river and maybe arguably in the river itself. I'm sure all of us have been down to the area where the waves are breaking and we can smell the stormwater coming down either from the Ventura River or from the Santa Clara River. And that smell is not natural. That is largely a product of what people have done. And the original Clean Water Act says that we are obligated to use the best available technology to solve that problem. And we are neglecting that problem. We are not solving the water quality problems presented by the first flush stormwater. And we could, if we simply applied what we already know. Thank you.
Peter and George. George, thanks for all of your questions. Peter, thank you so much for trying your best to answer. I think that I got a lot of great information out of the responses that you gave. And it seems that like water quality, obviously in the Santa Clara River is such a big topic to be discussed. And yeah, does anybody else have any comments or interest in this topic that they'd like to add? Okay. Since the meeting is, we're, towards the end here, I think that we can work on a little bit of a closing. So, thank you so much for joining, Peter. I'll share the technical guidance document to the group. And if anybody else has any other questions, please reach out and we can find, some answers. For closing information, I put a tentative update, another update from the RCD here to like introduce our wildfire preparedness regional prioritization planning tool. But there's not a rush on us giving this information. But we're essentially working on a regional priority plan for wildfire resilience with Rincon Consultants, and I think that the Santa Clara River has a great number of partners that could have valuable input to this plan. So I think I will try and bring it up at the next meeting and share it all with you. In terms of a summary of our outcomes of our June meeting, our funding partners have mostly decided that they'll continue to support the Watershed Committee. And so I will be working on sending the 2025-2026 invoices out within the next month. And we discussed the formation of a steering committee and to utilize a steering committee to continue the development of some goals and objectives for our group. With that being said, we may incorporate some meeting format changes, such as dedicating the first hour to some steering committee discussions on those types of topics, and depending on presentation availability, having the second hour for more general information. And we may mix in some in-person meetings only, or some recorded Zoom meetings. So I just wanted to put that on everyone's radar so that they knew, reading the information shared in our outreach emails, to pay attention to how the format will change for meetings moving forward. Yeah, thank you all so much for joining, and I'll leave the Zoom open for a minute or so if anyone would like to chime in and say anything else, but thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your week.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Yeah.
Thanks.